You are listening to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle Auburn family, and welcome back to another edition of E2C Extra, where we sit down, we get together, we talk about anything within the Auburn family spectrum. Always a little heavy on the sports here, but if it's orange and blue, it is what we do. On this episode, we are talking about the spring sports, and more specifically, one of the diamond sports, Auburn Baseball, and what has been a very intriguing and slightly amazing season, because I think a lot of people, I don't know if shocked is too strong a word, but maybe at least surprised with where Auburn now finds themselves at the beginning of postseason play as we enter the 2022 NCAA tournament, with the Auburn Tigers finding themselves as the number 14 overall seed, hosting a regional and an opportunity to make some noise once again as a host team in the tournament. We want to talk about that, but we also want to talk about what got us to this point, maybe a little bit of a retrospective back at the rest of the season and what led us to this point. And you don't want to hear me just talk about it. You want to hear some other voices. So more specifically, we're going to talk to a voice we've talked to before here. You know him from our YouTube channel, one of our regulars there. He's a member of the Booster Club, my good friend, Mr. Dustin Smith, or as we know him affectionately, Dusty. What's going on, Dusty?
Kyle, it's good to be with you, buddy. Missed your face. Glad you're back.
Listen, vacation is great, except when you bring back a souvenir of a sickness, as the listeners can probably hear in my voice. And I'll be doing that a lot during this. So please bear with me. It's Dusty's the one that's at 100%. I am not. So he's going to have to carry the load tonight. I don't think he was prepared for that. But let's talk about baseball a little bit. Like, how are you, just before we get into the retrospective and the look at the tournament, how are you feeling about Auburn baseball right now? Are you hyped about it? Or are you kind of cautiously optimistic? What is your feeling of Auburn baseball as we sit in that interim period between the regular season and the official postseason with the NCAA tournament?
When I look back at the season as a whole and kind of where we sit right now, I'm happy because there was an emphasis before the season from Butch, from the program, from everybody of kind of let's get the fans back involved. Let's kind of breathe some life back into the baseball program. And if you look at the attendance numbers, they were the highest. I mean, it seemed like every home series they were posting, highest attendance ever for a home series. So we really seemed to kind of do well in that. I saw as the season went on, the team got better, a lot more interaction on the social media sites, things like that. And those things are important nowadays. So I'm very happy about that. There's obviously some rumors going around about facility upgrades in baseball. So, we see we pulled the trigger on the basketball. Hopefully when that comes up, they'll pull the trigger on that as well and just keep the ball rolling. So, and we're hosting a regional. So if you look back at the beginning of the season, a team that was picked to finish dead last in the division, and now you're hosting a regional, you got every opportunity in front of you.
What is it about Auburn teams being picked last and then overachieving? I mean, is that just the ingredient for success? Pick us last and we're going to win the whole thing?
I guess there's, I bet people like this in your personal life that it seems like their back against the wall brings out the best in them. And that's the Auburn Tigers. So kind of maybe that will benefit us come this football season, huh?
No, maybe so. We can definitely hope so, because I think we're going to need a little bit of that mentality, especially with some of the expectations that are heading towards us in the fall season. But more back on spring stuff here. I do agree with you that the trend right now is in a very positive direction in terms of wins, in terms of perception, in terms of interaction and excitement level. We talk about the big three a lot. We talk about football, basketball, and baseball. And of those three, there's still a hierarchy with football, basketball, and it'll always be that way. I'm sorry, I don't care how good Bruce Pearl is. Football will always be first, and I love Bruce Pearl to death. We cannot. There is no measurement to prove how valuable Bruce Pearl has been to Auburn, but he will never surpass the value that football is to Auburn.
It's a culture thing there. It's where we live. It's just It
is. But on that point, baseball will always be third. And I think, what you see now is, and not that it hasn't happened before, but a recognition of the hierarchy and accepting of it, but also saying, let's play with the hand that we're dealt and invest in what we have and the excitement we have and make sure that we're putting a product out in the field that's exciting. And if you give the fans a reason to be excited about it, they will come. And boy, do they. I mean, you brought it up already. The attendance has been up. The excitement, the engagement on social media has been up. And it's been a really fun season to watch baseball kind of reestablish itself as part of that big three and really the minds of the fans. It's easy to get excited about it when it's postseason play, but this has been building for a while. I'll push it back into that weekend going to Tennessee and looking for some legitimacy. And I think people walked away, even taking a loss in the series against number one Tennessee at the time. This team was for real, and they were
we gave that Friday night game away. So when you look at it, it's really we had that series, and then we played well on Sunday. So
exactly. So that was a legitimacy, and I think it's a great point to bring up because we want to talk about what led us to this point. And what were your expectations, honestly? Did you expect Auburn to finish last in the SEC? Did you expect them to finish back half? Like, what were you thinking realistically when we started this season?
Just because Auburn was picked to finish last, I didn't think we would finish last. And, honestly, nothing's goofier to me than a preseason poll anyway. And especially now, you might as well give it up with the transfer portal. So when you look at Sonny DeShera's numbers coming from Sanford, he had good numbers, but you didn't think he was going to come in and bat over 400 for most of the year and, SEC co-player of the year. So I really didn't know what to expect. I knew we weren't going to finish last, but you have these transfer portal guys and baseball because of their time, and they had a whole season where they didn't get to play because of COVID restrictions. So everything's just kind of off, it seems like, in baseball to me. So I really didn't know what to expect, honestly, Kyle. I just knew that we weren't going to finish last. I knew that Butch Thompson was too good of a coach and that Tim Hudson was too good of a coach. And in my conversation with Heath Kelly, he just kind of reassured me, like, this program is going to do better than that.
Yeah. And I think back a lot to your conversation with Heath Kelly, which we published here, and it's very insightful now. So I hope people will go back and kind of listen to that in retrospect and kind of think, wow, maybe Heath knew a little bit of something.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes sense. A guy with connections to the program might actually know what's going on with the program.
Yeah. Played on that field and, came through in big moments for sure.
Absolutely. So very insightful on his part. And now I kind of look back at that. I was like, I need to listen to Dustin and Heath Kelly a little bit more often because they seem to know what's going on now. But yeah, I would say for me, being a little bit disconnected as I had been from baseball over the last two seasons, I kind of was similar to you. I didn't expect us to finish last because that's just me. I'd never expect Auburn to finish last in anything. Yeah. But I was kind of expecting us to maybe be on the lower end. I was asking people that are very familiar with the program before the season even got started. All right, tell me what to expect. Like what's in the common theme that we saw this season. Bullpen's questionable, who's going to be the third starter, that type of thing. And there were a lot of people that were excited about how we were going to be able to hit. And boy, did they still undersell that. I mean, Sonny DeShera alone, Blake Rambush, Kaysen Howell. I mean, the fact that we had to move around in the batting lineup, Sonny DeShera, to protect him into the 2 slot, and still people are getting wrecked by our 3 guy when we move him into the 2 spot, shows you how much flexibility offensively this team has had, which has also helped it in some of the deficiencies pitching wise that have sometimes, and I say sometimes, meaning that because there were times that the pitching staff actually kind of rose to the occasion more than we even thought that they would, specifically the bullpen. So I think that this team, its weaknesses are obvious. Its strengths are very obvious too. And it's really just a matter of, can they cancel each other out with the strengths kind of taking the edge? And if they do that, they have themselves in position to win.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that game one is your starter, going 7 innings deep, and you're getting out of that first game with a win. There's no reason why we shouldn't beat South Louisiana. No disrespect to them. They've got this far for a reason. Mm-hmm. But just when you look at the numbers and you look at who they played and everything, there's, that's something that we should handle. So let's, that starter, I'm assuming it's going to be Gonzalez because you really need to get that win. And I think the team needs to get a win after having a rough week last week. Mm-hmm. So hopefully it'll be a packed house, and I can't wait, man.
I can't wait. And let's talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But I want one more thing from you about kind of looking back at the season. If you had to pinpoint a moment or two, maybe one or two, whichever you'd like, of where the turning point was in this season where you said, okay, this team's got something going on. Where was it for you?
I would say that looking back at it, you look at how big the A&M series was now. Mm-hmm. I don't think they lost an SEC series after we beat them. So that's the same players, right? They were a talented team. So that's a good win for us. feel like that one probably helped us host a regional because they're a 5 seed overall. And then going down there to Baton Rouge and getting that one as well. That's a very good one. And that one kind of for me. And I wanna shout out to all the Auburn sports teams this year for your total domination of LSU. It's been great. It's been great. I'm sure they got some little stuff down there. Some corn dogs might come after me and pick out some little sport they beat us in. But when we're talking the big three, baby, we broke that curse. I smoked a big cigar that night. So we got that done in football. We got you in basketball. Rest in peace, Will Wade. And then we got you in baseball, your whole deal. So, man, how about the real Tigers of the West?
I mean,
So, yeah,
really.
I would say that series right there, and that kind of is the one. And then Bama too. Even though they didn't make the tournament, they still weren't a bad team. And Bobby Barrels was about to hit a line drive in the gap there in the bottom of that fifth, and we were gonna take the lead there and sweep them. So
Yeah, I think that's a key one to bring up because this potentially could have been the reason Auburn wasn't a host regional, but after missing that opportunity to have that win on the record, and that's like you said, saying against the Alabama team, which was not a pushover. So it would have been a solid win to have on the resume, even though it was at home, and it could have potentially really devastated Auburn, especially the way they ended the last 2 weeks of the season with the loss of the series of Kentucky, with the very disappointing performance in the SEC tournament. What is it without SEC tournaments and our teams not showing up these days? But hopefully that trend will not continue into the NCAA tournament this time. Hey, Auburn fans, I want to take a quick timeout from this episode to bring your attention to something very special. Here at the E2C Network, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best content for Auburn fans out there. And best of all, it's free to you. But just because it's free doesn't mean there aren't costs, especially when you have a library of hundreds of podcasts, videos, blogs, and more. Many of you have reached out and asked how you can support this network in the past. Well, now I have your answer. It's called the E2C Network Booster Club over at patreon.com/E2C Network. There you'll find a membership monthly reward system where you can sign up for as little as $1 and get different perks at different tiers. Some of those perks include things such as apparel, eligibility to join us on future podcasts, recognition as an E2C Network booster, exclusive communications, and bonus content that is available nowhere else. If you love this network and want to help us keep producing podcasts like this one, please head on over to patreon.com/E2C Network to join the E2C Network Booster Club. You can also get there by going to our website, e2cnetwork.com/support. Whether you decide to join or not, we are still so appreciative that you would support us by just listening and being here, because each and every one of you is part of our E2C Network family. Well, that's it. Timeout's over. Let's get back into the episode. When you're the 14 seed, obviously that's an honor. You're a host regional, but you are one of the last host regional teams, which means that you're probably going to be seeing stiffer competition in your host regional. So it's not just one of these given for, say, a number one Tennessee who should be sweeping the field and moving on to super regionals. No kidding. This is a chance for teams like UCLA as the number 2 seed in our regional, for a Southeastern, maybe, who knows? They might surprise everybody here, or a Florida State as the number 3 seed to surprise Auburn here and move on. So for everybody who thinks that just because you're a regional host means that that's just basically setting you up for success, don't think that. This is going to be a tough regional. So when you look at the regional as a whole, Dustin, what are your overall thoughts, impressions? How do you start making sense of what this looks like for Auburn in their host regional?
Well, when you look at it, you just kind of feel like it's going to come down to a Sunday where you have to beat Florida State, right? I mean,
it does feel that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's just kind of the way that works. But I mean, I don't want to sell UCLA short. Obviously, I didn't watch that Oregon State game, but those are some numbers. So I don't know what to think about their pitching or whatever with that. But they no, if you look at UCLA's numbers down their whole lineup, they have a lot of guys that are batting around 300 or 280, 290. They just have a real solid, they don't have a guy that really like sticks out, like a Sonny DeShera type. And if I'm missing on that, UCLA, guys, Bruins fans, I'm sorry, I haven't watched any of your games, but they seem to have a real solid, team. and I don't want to sell them short. They're a great program, but I just, with the history of it, you feel like you're going to come down to Florida State. So like I said, I just feel like that game one is the most important for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think getting off to a great start is something that Auburn really needs after the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They do that. They can probably ride that confidence boost. They can ride that little momentum maybe into that second win on day 2.
Yeah, because then the fans come back into the ballpark Saturday. Everybody's fired up. Everybody's feeling good.
Exactly. And then you move into a Sunday situation where you now have an opportunity. You have a 2-game buffer to move on in a double elimination regional to move on to super regionals. I think if Auburn can do that, if they can get to Sunday with no losses, they're going to be sitting pretty. And I'm not trying to be overconfident, but I just feel like the momentum's there. The hype's going to be there. As I said on a live stream I did previously, it doesn't feel like this team is willing to let something like that happen that's this significant for this program. And that may be me right now just setting us up for failure, but it just doesn't feel that way. But kind of like you said, it also feels like it's coming down to Auburn and Florida State because that's just the history of the thing. So in your no disrespect, as you said earlier, to Southeastern, but you are the number 4 seed in the regional. The expectation is for you to take a loss to Auburn. Maybe you surprise everybody and get a win in game 2, but you're going to be the first team out in theory. So let's assume things go chalk and they're not part of this conversation. Who do you really think it is? Is it Florida State, or do you think UCLA is the team that Auburn has to beat to get out of here?
I want to point this out. All these teams in this regional, with the exception of Auburn, not like it matters for us, we're the host, but we were 10-8 on the road. The other 3 have a losing record on the road. And like Florida State, I don't have UCLA's right in front of me. I do remember it was a losing record there. Florida State was 16-13, and Southeast Louisiana on the road. Let's see, I don't have it in front of me, but they had a losing record as well. So these are teams that are not very good away from home. I think it's Florida State though, Kyle. I really do. They've played the tougher schedule. They beat Miami. They swept North Carolina. Yep. They've played some good ball. They really have. And I like the ACC a little bit over the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm. It does feel like year in and year out, whether it's baseball or basketball, things like that, there's always those couple of teams from the Pac-12 or the West, we should say in general, that get out of there and they're very respectable. But then you look over to the ACC, as you said, Miami, North Carolina. We'll throw Notre Dame since they compete in there as well. They were in conversations for being a regional host as well. Several other teams. NC State, I believe, made it to the championship game. Those are not pushover teams. This ACC is strong. So when you come out of there, you got to expect Florida State to be good.
Yeah, I found that for the Southeast Louisiana, they were 9-17 on the road.
Ooh,
and that's in a conference that is not that great.
Yeah, that's not that good. So I don't want to continue to disparage the Southeastern fans, but I mean, goodness, I don't see a lot of hope for you in Auburn. FSU though, it does feel a little bit poetic if Auburn and Florida State with their history. Rod Bramblett, the late Rod Bramblett's had a lot of history with calling those types of games. Every year that goes by without him, it feels, like it feels like it's been decades now. So it would be almost poetic to have something special happen against Florida State with Andy Burcham, even without his, co-pilot, his former co-pilot. He and Brad Law do a great job together now on the calls. But it almost feels like this could be setting up for quite a special weekend. And I'm not talking about some amazing down to the wire game, but just something that Auburn baseball needed: a return to form, a return to prominence in a sense, and showing that Bush Thompson has really got this program heading in the right direction. And what I thought I loved you brought up earlier, that they require investment. Keep Butch here, give him the facilities, make the improvements. You've already done it by committing to a Frank Thomas statue out that's been long overdue. There's more that needs to be done, and I think they're going to prove that, hey, this isn't just a flash in the pan, and that's what I'm hoping.
Everything's cool, right?
Everything's cool. So any other thoughts on the tournament? Want to drop any predictions further beyond that, or is it too soon to do that?
Let's do this. Let's do a player that is most important to the team in this postseason here, this regional. That is not named Sonny DeShera.
I was going to say.
Choice.
I was going to say, that's a great question. Goodness. My gut is to go pitching because of how questionable, especially bullpen wise, they have been at times. However, with everybody not wanting to pitch to Sonny, you got to have the guys around him hitting well. I'm going to go Blake Rambush. I hope I didn't steal Rambo from you, but I think how good he's been, that's going to be the key to Auburn's batting success, is protecting Sonny DeShera.
He's right there at 350. He's been solid. I want to go Bobby Pierce. He has been coming on strong. He's batting 312. He's stolen 5 out of 6 bases, and he's only been in the lineup for a little over a month now. But I'm going to go Kaysen Howell, and I'm looking at the whole package from Kaysen. Mm-hmm. He's still batting right there at 300. He's at 295. And obviously he is a defensive stud. Anything out there, he's going to get to it. He's just not going to make a mistake out there. And his leadership. He was a freshman that year that we made the run to Omaha. He had some big hits. You can go back and watch it, the North Carolina regional, super regional. He really came through clutch a couple times. So he's got the experience now. They're going to be leaning on those senior guys that have been there and done that before. And so just from that whole total standpoint, I'm going to go Kaysen Howell.
It does feel like this is almost a passing of the torch moment for some of these guys that saw that little bit of success early on as freshmen, underclassmen, and are now waded through COVID, weird years, and a little bit of a downturn. I won't call it that, but a kind of a leveling off, and are now starting to be part of that upswing again. So it would be a lot of poetry going on with, potentially this regional and this senior class getting to do something very, very special. I like that pick, but here's the thing. Every guy on this roster has the opportunity to be the guy this weekend. Don't
make yourself a legend.
Don't think for a second, just because Sonny DeShera may or may not have a great batting game, that one of these other guys isn't going to show up. It can be, as you talked about, Bobby Barrels has come on. It can be, another beautiful, masterful pitching performance by Gonzalez. This team is stacked a lot more than people think it is, and I'm excited to watch it. But those are our thoughts on the regional and kind of taking a retrospective look back at the rest of the regular season. We would love to hear from you on social media. What are your thoughts about this team, the season that they've had, and what are your expectations for them in the regional and maybe even beyond? Before we get out of here, Mr. Dustin, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter, DMICHAUD28.
And you can find me on Twitter as well, at TigerEye24. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to E2C Extra. As always, we appreciate you being here. Until we talk to you again, War Eagle.
War Eagle, buddy.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.